Hi, I'm John Stevens,
This is Matt Russell.
and this is Pod Have Mercy.
This is Pod Have Mercy.
For those of you who are just kind of wondering what in the heck we're talking about, it's a bunch of nothing. Matt Russell is off doing Matt Russell things today. But the Suez Canal thing, okay, now this was fascinating to me. So, celestial, this is the reporting, celestial good luck, the worm moon. Do you know about this? Have you heard about this yet?
Yeah, I saw that.
I mean, so they got this
I don't know
ship.
much about a worm moon.
So they had this ship. Of course, you got to be careful when you say this. It's stuck in the Suez Canal, and apparently there's only room for one ship at a time to go through this thing, and it gets stuck, right? And they're backing up these ships all over the place. But go back up, go back down. So the worm moon. No, keep going. No, to the top. To the top. Yeah, there. All right, we'll stop. So worm moon leads to this high spring tide, 18 inches above normal, which was just what they needed to ease the process of straightening out and dislodging the ship. This is according to NASA. These people know what they're talking about because they're like space people.
So John, the first line of this article is a piece of celestial good luck. Is there such a thing as celestial good luck? I mean, we're talking about celestial. You're talking about heavenly bodies, right?
You're talking about an ordered thing. All right,
an order. So
good luck. This is not random. This is something that, it's going to happen. It's not all this. It's not like the moon was up there going, man, that ship is stuck. Man, I'm going to help them out. I think I'm going to spring a worm moon. I'm going to spring a worm moon. So anyway, they got this thing, these spring tides is pretty fascinating that this thing got dislodged because of this sort of order of the moon, the phases of the moon. It's pretty cool. I found that interesting. There were reports that there were boats with animals being shipped from Romania to all these different places in the world, and they were like, if this thing lasts even a couple more days, all of these animals are going to die on these boats, which I thought, wow, just in time, So, and I saw on Twitter there's a tugboat crew who they were the ones that pulled them out, and they were in Arabic. They were like cheering. I can't remember the name. Salfus number one. Their tugboat number one. Like they won. Like it was like they were just celebrating. They were so happy. It's like we got them free. Yeah. So it's Holy Week, and I don't know. It was interesting this morning. We were talking about in our staff meeting, and we broke out into groups. And sometimes when you work in a church, and I think even for everybody this year, just like last year. Last year was so surreal because we were really still locked down, weren't we? I mean, pretty much we were locked down. And so Easter we recorded, no one came, everyone watched online. That was the only way we did it. It was all recorded in pieces, put together. And so last year was really surreal, and I think you do miss it. You do just miss the whole meaning of the thing. It just kind of, like, it's just strange. And then this year we're coming into it, it's kind of like, it's a hybrid. It's like I don't know what to make of it because we're still not having as many in-person gathering meetings as we would normally do. So we don't have the daily, in-person concerts. We have a lot of stuff online, but not those. And then even for Easter weekend, we have outdoor services that we're doing, an indoor service by reservation. But what someone said is like, I don't want it to miss it again. Last year I felt like I missed it. Yeah. And we were talking about how, the ancient practice of going through Holy Week in each day, that there are specific, there's a specific focus or theme for each day. And then there's scriptures that you read for each day. So for example, like Holy Monday this week is when we remember Jesus turning the tables over in the temple. And then on Holy Tuesday, you remember some foreshadowing about his death, but also the withering of the fig tree. Mm-hmm. So there's all these little things that happen, right? And then, of course, coming up Maundy Thursday, not Monday, Thursday, Maundy Thursday, from the Latin word mandare, which means command or a mandate. And that's when he gives us the command to love one another as he has loved us. And so, I don't know, I think going through the process, it's important for people's own spiritual development, because you don't have the way to intersect with the church to kind of walk you through it like you normally do. Mm-hmm. I think you have to find your own rhythm. And I hope that people don't just get lost and then all of a sudden show up on Easter Sunday and go, wow, I just didn't even realize it was this week. I mean, I don't know. That's my thought. Yeah. And I think too, the looking ahead at what we find in the resurrection is surprise. You know, I'm wrestling with stuff this week on some of the notes about John 20, and the first thing that hit me is that, you know, resurrection, I learned a long time ago, is not something to understand, it's something to experience. Because I remember when I was a young Christian and I read all the Josh McDowell books, and it was all like proof, evidence that demands a verdict, and all this proof stuff, and how they had to like logically delineate, like, this is how we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that this actually happened. But you grow out of that at some point. Not that that's still not important, but it's like, that's not for me what it's all about. It's like, how do you make it real in your life in real time? How do you see resurrection happening all around you, like in a pandemic? Joseph, how do you see resurrection in the midst of a pandemic?
So I'm a nature guy. I am, my soul flourishes when I'm outside. I love getting outdoors, and one of the things this year with the freeze, and you drive around still today, and if you don't have the money to bring in landscapers to wipe off and basically create with a new canvas, you know, there's still a lot of reminders of the harsh freeze that we went through, right? And I remember folks commenting, you know, about all my stuff's dead. I even covered them. My plants are dead, and lo and behold, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, these azaleas up and down our street that like were leggy, dead leaves all over, all of a sudden started having these blooms. And so like zero green leaves. That's
in my yard, same thing.
And all of a sudden these blooms start coming up, and you are starting to see there's life coming out of what is assumed to be dead. There's this life. The most recent story, I woke up this morning and walked in. My parents, as you know, live next door to me, and they've been doing a lot of landscaping. And this past Christmas, someone gave them a pecan tree as a Christmas present. And so they planted it in their yard. It's small. It's like this tree. Pecan. Not a pecan. It's pecan in Georgia, but it's pecan here, because we're civilized people here. Come on now. So this pecan tree is yay high. It's single stalk right now, right? It's not very big, and it was planted before the freeze. And we've just been lamenting, like, well, you know, that thing's dead. Like, John, overnight, no lie, there's now like 6 green buds that are sprouting out on this tree. It's like,
yeah, that thing's from Georgia. It's strong.
Well, maybe it is a pecan tree. I don't know. A pecan tree probably wouldn't have made it, but maybe a pecan tree. But so for me, that's where I see this experience in the resurrection of what is believed to be dead, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this, because I can't fully comprehend death within this life, right? That there are things that I assume.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, on our driveway on the right side, just a row of azaleas, and literally the same thing. There's not one leaf on it, but there's tons of white flowers that are blooming. Now, I don't think my olive tree is going to do that well. I don't know. But one of the things that I thought, not intentionally thinking about resurrection and Easter, but as soon as the freeze was over, you know, I'm walking the dog through the neighborhood, and some people, like 2 days after the freeze is over, they got landscapers coming in, and they're probably spending like 10, 15, 20, they just replacing everything.
Ripping everything out.
Everything. Yeah. And there's a part of me that's like, you know, God's kind of hardwired into creation. These things are good. They're pretty resilient. Now, not everything will live. I get that. But like, let's see what comes back. And I think by sometimes being a little patient, you realize most everything I've got is going to come back. Not everything, but most things will. Yeah. And so it's the thing that's interesting to me, especially in the resurrection story and in John's Gospel in 20, is that the grave is located in a garden. And the garden contains the grave. And if you think about Genesis 1 and 2, the garden is the place where you have communion with God. The garden is the place where life is birthed. The garden is the place of just this wonderful sense of where life really happens, right, in the Bible story. Mm-hmm. And yet a grave is considered like a tomb, is where death happens. And yet I think John, and the Bible is just amazing how God works, is that this grave is in a garden. Yeah. And so you don't separate the two. And so what Jesus' resurrection from the dead is, the garden, which was a place of communion with God where humanity and God were connected together. And then when the fall came, they were cast out of the garden, which they were cast out of that connection. And then Jesus' resurrection in the tomb located in the garden now brings the garden back, that sort of that communion with God back. That's what his resurrection does, which I think is a great thing. So I've thought about that in my yard. It's like my yard went from a garden to a grave, and now it's coming back to a garden. But that play of the imagery of the grave and the garden being together, I think is pretty powerful. And I think if you open your eyes and you look around in life, what we did today is we ask, okay, what are the gardens in your life right now, right? Where there's life and there's newness and there's excitement. For me, it's like we got a wedding coming up, right? In 2 weeks, whatever it is, we got a wedding coming up. That's exciting. And then you think, well, what are the graves in your life? What are the things, and how are those working together? And I shared in our group, it's like we're not able to do as many baptisms of infants in the worship service, in our Sunday morning church service, but we're doing a lot of them after the service, in the chapel, in the parlor, just families, just Zoom together. And man, you talk about graves and gardens existing together. We're all of this family. Parents, grandparents are not able to travel and come and be there, but yet they're there on the Zoom. And to see the tears flow and the emotion of this child being baptized and them participating and in being there and them naming or speaking a blessing for their child from Wisconsin, or California or wherever they are. Normally they would be here and they would do that, but they have to do it removed. And it's like, on the one hand, it's like, man, we're in a pandemic. There's a grave aspect. But then right here in front of us is this garden, where this child is bringing new life into this family and thinking about the future. It's all about, I think, that if I were going to say, it's that second deeper look, and that's also in the story. If you read the story, especially in the Gospel of John, is that John and Peter run to the tomb. Mary goes first. He's not there. They run to the tomb. John gets there first, but Peter goes into the tomb first. And when he sees everything, John kind of peeks in first, but he doesn't go in. He looks in, but he doesn't go in. Peter goes in, doesn't find him there. And then after John sees Peter go in, it's after that, only then, that he goes in. And it says, finally, the other disciple, John, who had reached the tomb first, also went inside, and he saw and believed. And I love that image of a second look, a deeper look, looking at it a second time with new eyes. And I think about going through this whole past year of this pandemic, this guy that wrote, go up to the top, Adam Nicholas Phillips is this guy who wrote this blog article, which I think has been interesting. And he talks about spring coming and giving a sense of life, but scroll down just a little bit more. He talks about grief stages. Keep going right there. And he says, if you pull from Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, you have denial, you have anger, you have depression, you have bargaining, and you have acceptance. But one of the things he says is that there is a guy, David Kessler, who added a next, a sixth stage, and it's meaning. And with permission from Kubler-Ross's family, he's added this stage of meaning. And this is where, how, for example, do you look at everything that's happened this past year and know that in 1 AC, which is we're getting close to, right, after COVID, everything is like BC, before Christ, then there's AD, Anno Domini, and now in 2021, we're going to have 1 AC going forward. How do you find meaning in life, newness of life in this? What's the second look that we take? For example, I look at the church being really going to be different. I mean, the church is going to be different. Whatever we thought church was, a guy came out Sunday, and God bless him. He was kind of upset. I don't think, not mad so much, but just troubled. He was deeply troubled. And he said, he just looked at me and he put his hand on my chest and he's like, "Oh, I want you to bring our church back. I want you to bring our church back." And I was like, I don't understand what you're saying. Because at first I'm like, what does he mean? We're open. And then I thought maybe he was talking about masking or what. He's like, I want you to bring our church back. I was like, do you mean meet? We're meeting. We've been meeting. No, I just want our church back. I mean, do you mean like because we have different times in the services? No. I'm like, the masks? No. He goes, what makes church so special is I come and everybody's there. All my friends are there. And I visit with them and I talk to them and, you know, and they're just encouraged by them. And it's like, I bring that back. And I'm just thinking to myself, dude, I can't make people come back if they're not ready to come back. But it was this grief, right? It was just this powerful sense of grief. And he's in, if you look at those stages of, you know, there's maybe a little bit of anger, maybe a little bit of denial, maybe a little bit of bargaining or whatever. But he's not in an acceptance of what it is. I don't know. I mean, I think that's really hard for people. And I also saw a guy coming to church on Sunday, and he's coming out, and he just hugged me. He's got tears in his eye. And I'm like, hey, and he goes, this is my first Sunday back since last year. And I forget, for me in September, how emotional it was, the first service back. And I kind of tapped into that again. And I realized there are people now coming every week that it's their first time back in over a year, more than a year. And how emotional that is for people. So I don't know. I mean, I think you can either learn through this wilderness of this pandemic and come out with new sense of meaning, or, you know, you can come out of this pandemic and just really end up where you started. It's kind of like the Israelites, you know, you end up back in slavery where you were, or you end up in some new promised land. And I don't know exactly how everyone's going to process all of that, but I know that this, the way of taking a second look, I love that image of John looking in the tomb and taking a second look and seeing, the scripture said he saw the face covering, and that was transformative for him. There's a lot of reason why that is. If you go back in the Bible and you see the face covering and what the symbolism is of it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So Jesus prepared his followers, right? And he said, I'm going away. Where I'm going, you cannot follow, but I'll come back and I'll bring you to me. He talked about the time coming, and yet they didn't fully grasp. And then in the midst of the trial, the execution, and the waiting, we get this picture that the disciples had started to sink in, right? And even then, they didn't know what it meant that he would be coming back for them, right? And so the second look, in some ways, they're having to check their reality, because it's not just taking a deeper look of what they grasped and knew to be true. It was, they were taking a second look because what they had assumed was going to be real, what they assumed was being flipped upside down, turned inside out, and I can relate to that a whole lot more this past year than I could even in past Easters. Past Easters to reflect on the meaning of the resurrection, and to reflect on, there are traditions we've held here at the church that are very meaningful to so many, because it's how we do Easter. Easter's not going to be the same unless we sing this song, or Easter's not going to be, I won't be able to celebrate the resurrection unless I can experience, the Wesleys running in yelling, "He is alive, he is alive." It's those type of experiences. But when you don't assume that it's going to be taken away from you. And so last year, there was a moment when I woke up on Easter Sunday, and like my heart was being drawn to the campus. Like I wanted to come here so badly and just step in the sanctuary, because this is where I celebrate Easter. Mm-hmm. But it gets removed not by decision, not by a choice that we decided we're going to do something else programmatically. And then you have to stop, and that deeper look, it almost makes you question the value of all those Easters before. Those are meaningful. They're milestones. They help shape, and they're a part of my formation. But then when you start to look and say, there's life in the midst of pandemic. There's resurrection. We're seeing it. The folks that are coming back and experiencing the first time in a year stepping through, and they are breaking in tears, let me tell you, that's because of a deep love for this place and for what God has done by carrying them through this. I had a 93-year-old in my Bible study that came in person. Now, first of all, this is a man who's been faithful on Zoom. And so when there was a time when we would have conversations, say, well, some of our older congregational members, they can't do Zoom. Now, let me tell you, we've got folks at all age. Like, this is a guy who's been faithful. He walked into the fireside room for Bible study, and he said, I feel as if I've been freed. I'm like, that's a resurrection story.
Yeah.
That's a resurrection story.
Yeah. And when you think about spirituality, whether you're a religious person or not, in spirituality, it's always helpful to think about a second look beyond a first impression or a first look or a first glance. Because when you look at something at a first glance or a first look, and I think the vast majority of our lives, that's the way we look at things. We're moving too fast. There's too much going on. We're consumed by so many distractions that we're only able to look at it with a first glance, with a first look. And when you do that, you make a lot of assumptions about things. It's very superficial, triggers a lot of judgment about what you see, and that judgment is based on the things that appear obvious to you. It's apparent, it's superficial, and that first glance, you don't really linger over things. You don't so let your mind sort of process and meander over those things. You just work with the apparent, the obvious, the surface. But when you do that, you're not going to see any kind of a deeper understanding. You're not going to see any meaning beyond what is apparent from that first look. So in spirituality, we're always like, okay, how do we train ourselves to take a second look or a deeper look beyond the surface, I always talk all the time about testing assumptions, right? Don't make leaps of abstraction. And just in interpersonal relationships, so many people, we just are so unreflective. We read something or we see something, we make an assumption, we shoot you the email. Don't ask any questions. No curiosity at all. There's no second look. There's no deeper look. It's the first look, make my assumption, send the thing. And I've found that if you can learn to take the deeper look, the second look, learn to ask clarifying questions, suspend your assumptions for a while, then you will grow even more. You'll learn more about other people. You'll go deeper in your relationships. You'll find less conflict in life. Don't we want less conflict? I mean, that would be nice. But we just are a society. We get stuck at the first look. We get stuck at the superficial level. If you're going to train yourself on the second look, and this is what I love about the Gospel of John's resurrection story, is that John himself is writing the version, and he is willing to give you the behind the scenes that he was the one that, he kind of looked in, but he didn't really see everything. And it was when Peter went in and saw more fully that he's like, I gotta get a second look. I gotta get a look from the inside. I need to see more. And that was what led him, if you read in the passage of Scripture, that was what led him to belief, was at that second look. And in the Gospel of John, belief is not just, hey, I'm getting saved, I believe in Jesus. It's like, okay, now I've got a level of knowledge that's way more than I had, even though he followed Jesus for these whole 3 years. And he'd already believed in him. But now the gospel makes a shift. It's like he saw this. He went in with the second, and he believed. It's like, well, didn't he already believe? Well, yeah, but man, not like this. That's a deeper level. I think that's, if I was going to say for all of us to be challenged this Easter and this Resurrection Sunday, this weekend that's upcoming, I would say, man, the pandemic, not just the pandemic, but Jesus is kind of shake us up and go, you got an opportunity now to look at the world differently, see relationships differently, intersect and interrelate with people differently than you ever have before. That's why I am not so sure. There will be people who will not come back to church, or there will be people who will not come back to church as often as they did before. But I'm going to tell you what, the ones who come back, I think are the ones who are going to be taking the second look. And I think they're going to go deeper. And I think they're going to be more serious about what discipleship is. And so you may have smaller crowds, but I think you're going to have crowds that are going to be way more committed than they were before. And I think you're also going to have some people that intersected with church probably not as much before the pandemic, that are going to come back and go, this is something that was missing in my life before, and it took a pandemic for me to realize how much I need something like this. And I think you'll see those folks come. So you'll see some folks. I've already seen that. Yeah. I've already seen that the people that have been coming to church in the last couple of months. I mean, it's been interesting to me. That's like, I don't really know these folks that well. I don't know that they were real active, rolled their sleeves up, involved or whatever. I mean, it's been interesting to see. Yeah, you got some of your regulars, the regulars that always come. But I've been seeing a lot of folks that are like, I don't remember these folks being at that kind of level of integration or attendance or involvement. So I don't know. I don't think anyone knows the answer to what the other side of all this, the AC years, hold. But I think we've got to push people to take a deeper look, a second look beyond the superficial. That's going to be spiritualized.
So going to the Kubler-Ross and that, the addition of the sixth
meaning
that, the church throughout history has been a vehicle for folks to explore meaning in all different types, right? And it's part of what we're able to do within community and do through the lens of faith, but also within our Wesleyan heritage to do through the lens of reason and experience, and so for us to be able to wrestle together to say, well, where is the meaning that as a community we embrace? John, you've talked about how God has been at work through the people of Chapelwood through the pandemic, and in ways that if we weren't in a pandemic, I don't know if we're able to stop long enough to figure out to do, right? Whether it's the food pantry, or whether it's, helping shift folks to different models of discipleship and exploring virtual options because folks are on the go. And it's been this rekindling of awareness of the need for human touch and contact. I remember when our middle child was home from school with COVID, and my son and I had moved out of the house, and while my wife was there kind of caring for Madeline, I just remember there was a time when we were on the back deck and Amy was 15 feet away from me, And I'm sitting there and we're talking, and I wanted nothing more than to go just over there and just like give her a hug, because it had been like 5 days since I'd had physical touch on my wife's hand or her shoulder. And it's like, how many times do I spend out, how many hours do I spend out on my back deck, relaxing where Amy's inside? It's like, oh, well, when I can go in and
but you have
hold
access.
her hand, but all of a sudden it's that separation. It's like the need. It was so much more important to me that like I just wanted to go over and hold her hand, and so I think there are people that's coming out in this season.
Well, there's desire in that, and then we'll wrap this up. But there's desire in that, but then there's also this whole thing I'm seeing as we think about health updates. Where are we? What does it look like in all the places where we find ourselves? I've also noticed it's like if you tell someone they can't do something,
exactly
they
right.
want to do it. And if you tell someone they can do something, it's almost like there's this rebellious streak in us as Americans, man. So the masks are the biggest thing. And so today, once again, we were having conversations about that, and I reached out to, Mark Boom and others, and they're like, look, encourage people to get their vaccines. We're not at a level of herd immunity yet. There are still people that haven't been vaccinated. There are still people that can get sick. We still see numbers in the medical center that are above where we want them to see. You have 100% of phase 1 ICU occupied and 79% of phase 2 occupied. Yeah. All right, that's not good. And everybody's like, oh, it's great. And so coming out of church, people are like, John, I don't have to wear my mask anymore. I got vaccinated. I've had both of them. Good. That's great. Good for you. Someone else. I've been vaccinated. We need a section for vaccinated people. They don't have to wear their. I've been vaccinated. And it's all like I. And I just have said to a couple of them, like, we had a 21-year-old woman that was admitted to the hospital this week with COVID. And they stop and they go, oh. Well, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I get it. And Mark Boom sent me a note just a little while ago, and he said, man, he goes, we are getting close. I want to be at the end. We're really close. Thankfully, because he said, this is exactly what he said. I do believe that the end, in quotes, as there really won't ever be a definite end, but he said, it's in sight as long as we continue to have people get vaccinated. He said, when we get to May, we're going to start seeing a slowdown of people getting vaccinated, because what's going to happen is everyone who wants a vaccine is going to be able to get a vaccine. And so you'll see the slowdown of vaccinations in May. That's only a month away. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it's going to be, okay, now we're dealing with the folks that I'm not getting that vaccine. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. But I've also found the people that said they're not going to get the vaccine are also the ones that said they don't want to wear the masks. At least has been my experience. And again, I'm making no judgment on it per se, but it's just like when they attack or criticize churches for asking people to wear their masks, it's like for us, we're doing this out of love for the other. All right, I get it. You've been vaccinated, right? And you are immune, or at least you're 95% immune. I get that, all right? It's probably not, but they don't know for a fact that you can't carry the virus and share it with someone else yet. So what happens when, now remember how we changed all our behaviors to protect our grandparents? It was all about protecting our grandparents. Now I'm thinking it's about protecting our kids. Mm-hmm. My 23-year-old daughter who hasn't had a shot yet and has some recurring health issues, or your daughters, or, of course, you've had, all your family's had it by now, I think.
But we guess, hey.
But you understand what I'm saying? Yeah, it's like, so, right. Okay, we all kind of pitched into this dedication, and we made this sacrifice for you, and I get that you're excited. My mom's like excited to be vaccinated. I'm set free. But I was like, as Mark said to me in this, he goes, in a large setting still, he goes, I strongly encourage everyone to wear a mask. I understand the challenges that everyone is facing with this. Continue to gently urge people to keep their mask on out of love of the other. He said, we really can get to where we will need limited masking by the end of June if we can convince enough people to get this vaccine. He said by Easter Sunday, we will be within 10,000 doses of hitting 500,000. Now, he's just talking about at Methodist. So that'll be Monday of this next week. So He thinks if you hold out the carrot, people don't really think this way. This is what I love about Mark. He's so pure of heart. He's like, if we could just hold out the carrot, that, in the next 60 days, we could have optional masking, everything. He said, but stay the course, stay steady, get vaccinated. It's just so hard because this thing has become political. And I don't understand why. I think about, for example, my friend Kimmy, who works at El Tiempo, right? He's a server at El Tiempo. And this guy has to wear his mask all day, every day, busting his tail, working hard, and he wears it. And I'm thinking, if he can do that, then I can sit in church and wear mine, right? Now I have to get up and talk sometimes, but, I don't know.
It is encouraging to hear, though, that the end, is near, if you will. If you think about it from an
apocalyptic.
Well, I know the end has felt really close for the past year.
No, I would just encourage that. This has been a good day. We're just kind of riffing off some things, but I think as you come into Resurrection Weekend, think about the second deeper look at all things in your life, and then let's just stay the course on the vaccine. If you haven't been vaccinated, get vaccinated. I think it's open in Texas now to everybody. Yeah. All right, CDC has now said schools can get closer together, which means that the church will be able to do some of these things as well. So I'm encouraged, and I hope that people are. We got to stay the course. Anything else, Jeff?
Well, you mentioned a topic that we can't just gloss over.
Oh, okay.
Okay, you're 2 weeks away from being the father of the bride.
Yes, 2 weeks.
There's a lot of preparations gone into that. How are you? This is the first time you've gone through this. I've never gone through this.
It's the first time to go through it. I have, again, what did I say earlier? The second deeper look, right? I don't have any assumptions about this. I'm pretty good about being able to say, okay, I'm not going to project. We're just going to experience it in the moment. I don't know is that bad or good, but that's just kind of the way I live life.
Yeah. Well,
so I don't build up any anxiety about it, because everybody's like, "Well, do you have your speech written? Do you know what you're going to say? You having?" I was like, I hadn't thought about it yet. But I will. There'll be time I'll give to it, but no.
Can you release the father-daughter dance song, or is that?
Oh yes. So the father-daughter.
Do you have to get clearance for this? I know you used to say that you'd have to pay your daughters when you would reference them in a sermon.
No, podcast. No, I don't.
Podcast is free. You can reference.
Yeah, it's Frank Sinatra, The Way You Look Tonight.
Ah,
Nice.
Yeah, I'm going old school.
What color is your tux going to be?
I'm not wearing a tuxedo. I'm wearing a black suit because it's kind of like a funeral. It's kind of like a funeral. It's kind of like not like a funeral. It's a funeral to my bank account, so I'm wearing a black suit.
Kind of like a funeral. I don't know.
And then she has this is what you need to understand about weddings. If you think that I had a choice in what I was supposed to wear, you are sadly mistaken. I was told I had to wear a black suit. And so I was either going to get one and rent through some company, which I said, no, thank you. I went and bought a new black suit, which I needed a new suit anyway. So it worked. I broke it in this past weekend at a wedding. So
nice.
Yep.
Well, your daughter's marrying a fine young man.
He is a fine young man. He's fine, Barney.
You're going to have your first son. Yeah. In-law, legally speaking.
Mm-hmm. Yep, son-in-law. And then I'm like, when is your stuff out of my house? Because this room, I need it. I'm going to turn it into a workout room, a man cave.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
I was about to say, working out.
That's another thing I have no control over. My wife said, no. Well, anyway, it's been fun. Thanks for coming by, Joseph, and sitting in today for Matt. Appreciate you and all you do here. I'm John Stevens.
And I'm Joseph Clam.
And this is Pod Have Mercy.